Today on Applied GameTank, I'm going to be documenting a process by which I'm building a peripheral for the rear expansion port that goes on the back of the GameTank. And the goal is going to be to connect music editing software on a PC to play music in real time so that someone who's making music for a game can preview it, how it's going to sound like on the actual console. The plan will be to use a program called Hairless MIDI, which presents a virtual MIDI port on your computer, and is also a program that, by the author's own admission on their website, quote, will probably not work on modern operating systems, unquote. So we'll probably be fine there. And this is going to do a serial connection to an Arduino and present, like, there's a library on Arduino that will be able to react to MIDI commands and parse them, and that is going to connect to the parallel port on the back of the GameTank. We can check the handy GameTank printed manual, which happens to, in the back, have a table of all of the pinout of the expansion port on the back. We can see that all of the VIA pins, which is the versatile interface adapter 6522, or most of them are exposed on here. So we have enough. We have PB, PA, CA, and some other stuff too that's probably not going to be helpful right now. But we can connect to this and essentially make a sort of parallel interface to send whole bytes at a time. Specifically, we'll be using these PB0 pins and these two CB pins, which are going to be used for handshaking. So the first specialty part we'll be using for this will be this little breakout board for the 26 pin. How many pins was that again? 26 pins. Connector that breaks these all out to these handy little screw terminals. This can just slot right neatly into the back of the GameTank. I'm just gonna use an Arduino Mega because there's no overkill like overkill. Open source electronics prototyping platform that I don't remember buying. So yeah, I guess we're just going to use this thing. This is what that looks like. I have the pins from the GameTanks expansion, pins 19 through 26, which correspond to port B on the VIA, and these are going to 30 through 37, which is port C on the Arduino Mega. What is handy about this is that the entire port can be written to with one instruction. Slight change of plan. I'm going to use pin 21 instead. The reason for this is that there's only certain pins that can be used as interrupt pins, and you can essentially set a condition on that pin where it'll go like, if it goes like boop boop or it goes like boop boop, then it will immediately call a function no matter what else the Arduino is doing, and then get back to what it was doing after that function. The game plan for the Arduino code is that it needs to run in this sort of continuous loop and spin a couple different plates. This is because the serial buffer by itself only has 64 bytes on the Arduino, so if we keep sending MIDI messages to it, each one is 4 bytes. So if it's not dealing with these in time, it will fill up and buffer overrun, which means I think it'll just stop getting new messages with only 16 MIDI messages. So what we want is that it's going to be constantly attending to that queue. We're going to have a bigger memory area that we copy these messages to, and that's going to be checked just constantly. And so rather than do, a fixed cadence of get MIDI message, send it to GameTank, get MIDI message, send to GameTank, we're going to be filling up these sort of queues. We're going to say, all right, MIDI data goes into the queue. Then we're going to be checking if the GameTank has received, finished intaking the last data byte. in which case, we would update the C port on the Arduino, and that's going to be the new data. And if we pulse CB1, that will tell the GameTank, hey, the next byte is ready. And that's a really quick process. We just handle one element of the queue and just pop that out. Then we check for the new MIDI data, and cycle continues. This will ensure that we don't overrun the MIDI data serial queue, but we also don't keep the GameTank waiting too long for new messages, so we can keep updating its music engine for the preview.
Here's the code for that. Slight differences from the original whiteboard idea being that we have a queue size. So this is going to be our byte queue. The queue is not actually a queue of MIDI messages, but a queue of bytes that get sent to the GameTank. We're going to have our basic setup here. Output and input for CB1 and 2, which are defined up here. Begin serial to start getting the heartless MIDI messages. Attach interrupt. This is going to call this function set GT received flag whenever that pin is rising. And so the loop will just go as long as MIDI message is available, cue the bytes of the command, and if there is no message currently waiting for the GameTank to have received, and there are bytes in that queue, then we will bring CB1 low, set the GameTank port, which we defined as port C, to the value of that byte, mark our flag as message pending, and then bring that line high so that the GameTank knows it's essentially ringing the doorbell, and that will cause the interrupt to happen on the GameTank.
Now that the Arduino can try to send data to the GameTank on the expansion port, the GameTank needs to actually do something to receive that data and let the Arduino know when it has received each byte. I've modified the interrupt handler for Ganymede, replacing the existing one that's mostly used for animation handling, with one that is just for receiving this MIDI data. Although technically it will doesn't have to be MIDI data, but right now we're using it as MIDI data. And this is a really short interrupt, and basically what's going to happen is every time we go on a triggering edge of the handshake signal from the Arduino, we're going to run this, and essentially, this is a queue. So we have a tail variable and a count variable, and the tail is going to be loaded into the Y register, and then we load the value that's currently in the output. I guess in this case it should be input register B, but my macro is just ORB. And then we're going to store that in X message buff, which is our queue, taking advantage of having made this a 256 byte array, meaning that it'll just loop over on its own. We're going to increment the tail, we're going to increment the count. This is the indexed addressing. Then we're going to do this sort of register twiddling on the versatile interface adapter. This is going to clear the interrupt flag that was set by the trailing, the edge. I think positive edge, or no, negative edge was the one. And then next we're going to send a outgoing pulse to the Arduino, and this is going to tell it, hey, we're ready for the next byte. The byte that you sent before has been received. This is the addition to the beginning of the program that's simply going to prepare us for calling these interrupts. DDRB is set to 0, and that's just going to tell it that those are all going to be inputs. We load these two bits into interrupt enable register. The high bit simply tells it that the other bit we're setting those is going to be a enabling bit. If it was 0, then that 1 would disable a interrupt. And that 1 there is in the position to enable specifically the interrupt from CB1. This PCR setting is going to tell it that we're putting CB2 into an output low state. And then we're also just setting IFR, we're just making sure there's no flags on IFR that are going to be indicating an interrupt. And here we have the main loop, and we're kind of just, again, preempting the existing code. but after all the initialization. And the only thing we really need to do here is we're going to be checking whether the buffer has 4 or more bytes, and if there are, we're always going to just grab that into a struct current MIDI, and current MIDI is going to have the channel, the command number, and the params. And we just do a simple, if it's MIDI note on, we'll set note and amplitude. This tells our music engine that we want to play a note. MIDI note off just silences the note. A special detail is that we're actually keeping track of the last note on every channel and only doing note off if it matches. The reason for that is, this is a monophonic. Each of these channels can only play one note at a time. So if a note on happened, that's sort of implicitly a note off for the previous note. So old note offs don't need to do anything. And then MIDI program change. These aren't going to match the usual standard MIDI numbers like for pianos and guitars, but the number will go across, and we're going to be using the existing index of instrument parameters. Sort of check here in the game right now. I've only got piano, guitar, distorted guitar. Slap bass is probably the one that sounds the most like its name, a snare drum, and I call that sort of a sitar. MIDI program changeable command will use that index and set that channel to use that instrument setting. And then it just ticks the music engine, sleep for a frame.
So this is the hairless MIDI to serial bridge. They say the last release was in August 2012. Will probably not work on modern operating systems. I'm looking at you, macOS. I've used this much more recently than 2012. Can't think that much has changed.
So now we've switched over to FL Studio and we've configured it to receive the MIDI from hairless MIDI through loop MIDI. Or I guess it's not receiving, it's sending the MIDI, and then the Arduino is going to receive that MIDI over the serial bridge. On here, in order to set up those instruments and send the program change commands, we go channel by channel and set the patches here. Channel 2, instrument 4, which is going to be index 3. Channel 3, it's index 5, that's going to be our snare drum. They call that electric piano in MIDI land. And channel 4 is going to be instrument 1. It's our default. So now if we go over to the piano roll, we can already, that's the piano sound from the GameTank. That's playing out of the GameTank and being recorded. You might hear a little bit of a high-pitched whine. That's because the GameTank is currently being powered by the USB port. I tried powering it separately, and for some reason the power, it leaks over. It leaks through on the GPIO. So might as well just power it by USB anyway, have one less cable. If I start playing, there we go. We're able to play the whole song just as it sounds like in the game, because it is being played back by the same engine using the same note commands. So now we pretty much, I've got what I wanted on this project so far, in that it's good enough to start using for previewing music while composing. But that said, there are still a couple of issues that eventually I should get around to fixing. The sync issue. When I connect this to the computer, I have to push restart on both the GameTank and the Arduino a bunch of times. And this is because there are 4 bytes being sent for each message. The Arduino is here, and the GameTank is here. And this is they're going to be way out of alignment, and they're going to get stuck with the Arduino thinking that it has to send another byte, and the GameTank thinking that it's waiting for a message. So that's a stalemate. Buffer overrun. If I run a really fast song, the notes start tripping over each other, and I think this is because the GameTank is there's too many notes. It's sending a lot of events at once, and the GameTank might move on to recording the rest of the frame, and not realize that that it needs to wait for more messages. That's pretty much it for what I plan to cover in today's video about the MIDI converter for the GameTank. Thank you for joining me on this experimental process, and I hope it gave some insight to developing hardware for the GameTank. Now I will conclude the video by telling you about events at which I will be tabling with the GameTank, and you can see one in person and buy one if you like it, or just, poke it. It's free to poke it. You can just poke it. Maybe not too hard, but and maybe not while somebody else is playing it. You should wait your turn. August 9th through 11th. I'll be tabling at the Long Island Retro Gaming Expo. It's at the Air and Space Museum in Garden City, and it's great. And you can play also like real consoles. Mine's real too, but you like ones that you might actually have nostalgia for, and there's pinball machines, and it's a overall good time. Hackers on Planet Earth. I don't remember the location for this. I'm gonna have to look it up. It's a hacker conference of some kind. My friends said I should be at it, and if you're there, then I'll see you there. PAX West. I'm really glad these magnets will stick overlapping because I did not account for their height. I'm going to be at PAX West as well with a table that's in Seattle. So if you're in Seattle, if you're going to PAX West, come check out the GameTank booth. You can play Ganymede, which is not for sale yet, not finished, but there's other ones you can buy. You can just play other GameTank games as well. I'm looking forward to seeing you there.